One. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ticklish Business for a very special bonus episode that we are doing today. As always, I'm Kristen Lopez, and this week we are joined by author and TCM host Dave Karger to talk all about his new book, 50 Oscar Nights, which is just a delight. And I hate that you're showing me up. I'm like, my TCM book has 52 books, but you have 50 Oscar Nights, which sound way cooler than mine. So, just jealousy all around.
Well, I think it should be the other way around, Kristen, because I only have 50 and you have 52. So you have more.
Right, but 52 books versus 50 Oscar centric celebrity things. I don't know. I feel like yours just sounds funner. Yours sounds like a funner way to spend 50 days than me.
I personally think people should read both books, mine and yours.
Yes. Yes. I support all of this. Shameless plug for both of our books, by the way. Before we get into talking about that, we'd like to remind everyone that if you haven't checked out our Patreon at patreon.com/ticklishbiz, you should. We do all sorts of additional bonus features, including doubled features looking at remakes based on a true podcast looking at biopics and true crime. We have a fun episode coming up that I don't want to spoil by telling everybody what movie it is. We also give out regular care packages of movies and gifts and let you guess on an episode. It's patreon.com/ticklishbiz. And don't forget, our Redbubble store has some fabulous art, all designed by Samantha Richardson and Terrence Hilt, including our Gene Kelly and Judy Garland Makoko mugs. That's at redbubble.com, or that's at ticklishbiz.redbubble.com. So back to Dave. I got to watch you talk about this book at the Academy Museum. And I've seen you you're kind of on the press tour for this, but I'm always interested in asking authors what what had enticed you to want to take up authoring. It's something that I know a lot of people say like they want to write books, but once they get to the actual process of it, they're like it's a lot harder than just having an idea. But can you kind of take listeners through the journey of conceiving of this project?
Sure. I actually had been approached over the years by different book agents and publishers asking if I was interested in writing a book. And I always said no. As you know, I was a writer at Entertainment Weekly for 17 years. It was my first job. I loved it. I got to travel the world and interview so many interesting people. But after 17 years of writing week in and week out, once I kind of pivoted to hosting, I wasn't interested in going back necessarily to writing at all the different points that I was asked to. But 2 years ago, I was approached by the TCM people and also the people at Running Press who publish all the TCM books, including yours. And they all came to me and said, you've been a host on the channel for a while now. Would you be interested in writing a TCM book? And at that point, I thought, well, maybe this makes sense now. This could be an interesting way to diversify what I do under the TCM banner. And also, they gave me kind of the freedom to come up with my own concept. They said no guarantee that they were going to accept whatever concept I came up with, but they were interested in hearing what I would want to do. So, as you may or may not know, Kristen, my first boss was this amazing guy named Mark Harris, and I'm sure your listeners know.
Yes, we've had Mark on the podcast. He is a legend in his own right.
A legend and the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. So I started out as his assistant at Entertainment Weekly in 1995, so almost 30 years ago. And of course, I've read all of his books and they are brilliant. And his books did two things. One, inspired me to want to do something in this book space. And secondly, showed me that I am not the kind of person who can sit and properly write a 300 or 400 page book like Mark Harris does. That's just not what I want to do or was interested in doing.
That's only for like the greats. But just the concept makes my hands sweat.
Exactly. And that's not what people want from me. So I thought, what would a book be that would be fun for me to write and would also, I think, be appealing to movie fans. So I came up with this concept of 50 Oscar nights where I interview 50 Academy Award winners. These are all brand new interviews just for this book, about the day that they won their Oscar, from the moment they woke up to the moment they went to bed, how they decided what to say, who to go with, how to prepare, what to wear in some cases, some backstory about the movie that they won for, and some perspective on it all of these years, or in many cases decades later, and of course where they keep their Oscar. So that saying, it seemed like a doable concept for me, as opposed to sitting down and writing 300 pages. It was 50 interviews. So the Oscar winners are kind of writing the book with me, essentially. And the TCM and Running Press people liked the idea. So that was summer of, well, I pitched it in spring of 2022, 2 years ago. And then starting in July of 2022, I started reaching out to Oscar winners. And the whole process from reaching out to people, booking the interviews, doing the interviews, and writing it took 7 months, which is actually, I think, kind of less time than I expected it would take. I mean, it was a lot of work, a lot of wrangling people, but it was such a joy to do.
I do love that Running Press, as I say this with love. I wrote my book in about 6 months. So they certainly put your feet to the fire and say, you can write a book in less than a year. It doesn't take that long. That, which is why on my second book, I said I want a year from the date it starts to, a full year. I learned my lesson the hard way.
Well,
uh,
and your book is properly written through. It's all your words.
yeah.
I have the luxury of, other people essentially, as I said, writing it with me. So hats off to you.
Well, and what I appreciate about the book, is that the concept of winning an Oscar seems so cut and dry. You win the Oscar, you give the speech, you go home, and that's really it. But you're really kind of diving into what Oscar means, to a lot of different people. I know that, you talked to Marlee Matlin, who I love, and she has talked about in her autobiography, but she talks about it as well to you, about the the criticism that she received. And I know that a lot of people have talked about her Oscar kind of being this tokenizing award. And I know Children of a Lesser God is also one of your favorite movies, which I'm going to be writing about in my book on disability. So like it's all cyclical. But I'm curious to hear how you approached kind of interviewing people whose Oscar win often came with a lot of like conflict and mixed feelings both from them as well as like culturally.
Yeah. Well, I definitely went out of my way to reach out to people who I knew had an interesting story to tell surrounding their Oscar win. So Mira Sorvino, winning for a Woody Allen
Yeah.
movie by Harvey Weinstein, right? I knew a little bit about Nicole Kidman and all the kind of the personal turmoil that she was going through, even though her professional life was going so well, because she was single when she won her Oscar. Barry Jenkins, of course, and Marlee Matlin. And I'll be honest with you, and I think I even said this at the Academy Museum event, but because I love Children of a Lesser God so much, I actually hesitated to reach out to Marlee Matlin at first. I didn't reach out to her at the beginning of the process because I wasn't sure that she was going to want to kind of dredge all this up again, this horrible argument that she got into with William Hurt, her co-star in the movie, and who was also her boyfriend at the time. They had a very dysfunctional relationship, it sounds like. And also selfishly, because I love the movie so much, I was hesitant to kind of like bring out another story that was at all negative surrounding this movie that means so much to me. Uh,
Exactly. It's hard to really look at movies objectively when they mean so much to I mean, that's this entire podcast. Like, how do you talk about classic films knowing the problems inherent within them? So I understand this 100%.
it's true, but I decided, you know what? I need Marlee Matlin in this book. I need to at least extend the invitation. So I did. And as I've said before, she was the quickest yes that I got from anyone in the book. I mean, I got a yes like the couple hours after I emailed her publicist. Like, yes, she would love to do it. And 2 days later, we were on Zoom together doing the interview, and she was just a delight. And she loves the book, which means a lot to me. And she's very happy with her chapter and all of that, because it is essentially, eventually, an empowering story, where this man, William Hurt, and again, this was hard for me because he's like one of my favorite all-time actors. This man was horrible to her, particularly on the night of the Oscars, where he said, "Why do you think you deserve this? You won this for your first movie. All the women you were up against worked harder and longer than you to get what you just got on your first movie." And it really deflated her for a time, but then it also made her realize, no, I earned this. I deserve this. And as she explained to me in the book, she left him just about 4 months later. But I had no idea about the timeline of her addiction journey and her
Yeah.
rehab that was happening as she was going through. Can you imagine in this day and age if someone who was up for an Oscar with all of the campaign, like this was back in 1987, where it was less, with all the campaign that somebody was in Betty Ford in between the Golden Globes and the Oscars? I mean, it's
Yeah.
insane.
Well, and to add the other layer of her being a deaf performer, because there's still this very real stigma that deaf and disabled people don't have addiction like we don't succumb to those things, like we don't have that. We already have the disability thing. We don't need another element. So, and I think that's why I unabashedly love her, is that, for good and for ill. And I know there's just as many people in the disabled community that have problems with that Oscar win as love it. But she really did put a spotlight on the fact that deaf and disabled people are real people. Like they have the same issues. We all struggle. Like that's why I love her. But I'm biased, so
I love her too. And she's also, by the way, so proud that her record of being the youngest Best Actress winner, because she was 21 when she won, as you well know, that record stands to this day.
yeah.
And she's super proud of that.
And I think she's still the record holder for disabled actress. I don't think we've had another winner. We've had an actor. We have Troy Kotzer, but I'd like to. No offense to Marley, I'd like to see that record broken at some point before I'm old and gray. Well, Eddie's also had a book out, Alicia as well, and you mentioned Mark Harris. Did you get advice from them? Are you a person that gets advice from other writers about how to approach a book in general?
Mark Harris was a great sounding board for me when I had a couple issues that came up. Eddie was helpful because he's written running press TCM books before. Alicia's books have been with other publishers, although she is doing a TCM book, as you know, right now. Did you know that,
I
Kristen?
did not know that. Oh, that's exclusive. I'm excited.
It's a book about foreign language films.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh
You know
my
what?
gosh.
You know what? I'm going to edit myself. It's a book about foreign films. So they're not all foreign language films because
Okay.
some are from Australia and United Kingdom, but it's a book about, what she considers some of the most noteworthy films that were not made in the Hollywood system.
That's gonna be so fun. I can't wait for that one.
Me too.
Yay.
So they were really helpful. But I kind of mostly did this on my own, Kristen, and I think part of the reason why I felt comfortable doing it that way was because these chapters, these interviews, which are either 4 or 6 pages long each person, were very, very similar to the kind of work that I did in Entertainment Weekly, right? I mean, even the introductions that I write for each chapter feel very Entertainment Weekly in a way. So it felt really second nature to me. But the fun of it was that it was my project. It wasn't part of a magazine or a publication. It was mine. And also because out of the 50 people, 15 of them were people I had never met before or
Yeah.
never interviewed before. So that was really fun to interview Rita Moreno for the first time, Mel Brooks, Melissa Etheridge, John Legend, who I love. That was part of the real excitement of this, was those first time interactions that I had with those 15.
Well, I know most of the listeners have not been in the unique position that you and I have been, which is talking to Rita Moreno. So I have to ask you, can you talk a little bit about sitting down with Rita? I've talked to her, and I know that her old Hollywood experience was also very fraught. She was very, I think, worried that she was going to disappoint me when she told me, like nobody ever really talked to me on the studio lots because I was the little Hispanic girl, and I was like, I don't care. I support you. I think you're awesome. But I'm curious. I mean, can you talk about sitting down with her and talking about her momentous win, which all again also has a lot of back and forth to it.
Yeah. She maybe was like the dishiest interview in the whole book. I mean,
Yep.
she was spilling all the tea. especially about Joan Crawford. Anyone who reads this book, if you want a great story about just classic Joan Crawford just being Joan, you got to read this story. And she was like, "Do you not know this story?" And I said, "No, tell me." And I was just, my jaw was on the floor and she was talking about. I won't spoil it here, but she was great, and she's 92. She is so sharp,
Yeah.
so fun. She loves TCM, so that was great. And I've seen her now a couple times since, and we text now, which is crazy. Um,
Jealous.
I know she likes the book. She has it on her coffee table at home. So she was really great. But yes, to your point, Kristen, even as she was like gearing up to go to the Oscars after she had been nominated for West Side Story, she was in the Philippines making one of her kind of like ethnic girl roles, as she called it, which she absolutely hated. So even though she had like done this role of a lifetime and was about to win an Oscar, she was still kind of relegated to these, really thankless kind of horrible ethnic roles.
Yeah, and she still had to fight after winning this Oscar to be taken seriously as a performer. After winning a dang Oscar, it boggles the mind. Although you got a Joan Crawford story, I got a James Garner story. So,
Ooh,
yeah,
that's almost better.
yeah, she said that James Garner was the nicest man she'd ever met. And I was like, thank goodness, because if you had said he wasn't, it'd have probably broken my heart. So there you go. But I know TCM and Running Press, diversity is at the forefront of a lot of things. I know when I got, my book started, they said, make sure, you try to hit all avenues, not in a way that feels like you're checking off a box, but being aware of, the different voices that you're talking to, and I know that you have a really great interview with Alan Menken here where he talks about Howard Ashman. And I thought that was, can you talk about kind of crafting and making sure you're hitting all of those different diversity elements without being too, making it performative, I guess.
Well, that was very important to me. And, because the Oscars, of course, do have a history of being, largely white, straight winners, right?
Yeah.
So in the book, I'm very happy to say that 1/3 of the people that I profile in this book are either performers of color or members of the LGBTQ plus community. 1/3. And that's way more than the Oscars have, given awards to. But they oftentimes had the most interesting stories. But to talk about Alan Menken, the reason I thought about putting him in the book was because of that beautiful Disney Plus Howard Ashman
Yeah.
entry, which was just, it really moved me when I saw it a couple of years ago. And when I was putting the list together for this book and I knew I wanted some composers in there, I thought I got to have Alan Menken because I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the story that he tells in the documentary about right after they won their Oscar for Little Mermaid. And Alan Menken won two that night, one on his own and one with Howard. Howard said to me, I guess at a party that night, when we get home, I need to talk to you. And Alan Menken thought that he was like wanting to break up with him, professionally speaking. And they got home, and that's when Howard told him that he was not only HIV positive, but had AIDS. And he will only lived for like a year later. And so it was a beautiful story. It was a horribly sad story. And to hear Alan Menken say that he feels like he's living Howard Ashman's unlived life, it just broke my heart. But I'm so grateful to Alan for, by Alan Menken, by the way, of anyone alive, has the most Oscars, 8 Oscars, no one
Yeah.
alive. So the fact that he was willing to be in the book and speak so candidly about Howard Ashman, and I appreciate you, Kristen, for even asking about him, because I've done so many interviews now for this book, and hardly anybody has brought up that chapter. And I think it's one of the most beautiful chapters. So thank you for even
Of
asking about
course.
it.
I mean, I'm biased. Little Mermaid's been my favorite movie since I was 3 years old. So, I mean, anytime I talked to Alan Menken, interviewed him very briefly and tried very hard not to cry in front of him. So, anytime I can just talk about The Little Mermaid is a win for me. Well, I
That's
know
fair.
I know you talked about, people you couldn't get for this book. I know you mentioned at the Academy Eva Marie Saint and a couple others that you couldn't get. Are there old Hollywood ones from the studio era who are long gone that if they were still here, you had a time machine, you would want to get for this book?
Hattie McDaniel.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That'd be a
To
good
hear the
one.
story of her win in 1944, Gone with the Wind, where she like wasn't even allowed to sit with all the white nominees at the Ambassador Hotel because they didn't allow black people in the hotel, but they made an exception for her. But she had to sit in the off to the side, and then she beat Olivia de Havilland. Like all the ups and downs of that, I would
And
have
they lost her Oscar. Like her Oscar is still missing, which is just insane to think about.
insane. So that's an interview that if I could have done, I would have wanted to. And then when I was at Entertainment Weekly, I did have the ridiculous pleasure of interviewing Robin Williams. And
Ooh.
and he was the funniest, most entertaining interview I've ever had. I mean, it felt like I was getting a one-man personal comedy show. And now, of course, we know so much more about what his life was like and what his emotional, mental health battles were like. But the night he won for Good Will Hunting in 98 was such a special night. And he seemed like he was on top of the world and so moved and delighted by it that I would have loved to have gotten a reminiscence from him about that night.
I'd probably say Joan Crawford for Mildred Pierce. She didn't show up. She was at home sick. I'd love to get like the full story about whether that was even true or not. Odds the story is that it's not true. That she was just like hanging out at home. I'd love to know that. These are the things that I would be interested in.
And I tried to get Barbara Streisand in this book,
You did.
but she was writing her own memoir, so I couldn't because I wanted to know about the tie, the Best Actress tie.
Yeah.
So if I do a sequel, and I do 50 more night Oscar nights or another 50 Oscar nights or something, I am not taking no for an answer until I get Barbara Streisand.
Just need to tell her, listen here, Babs, you wrote like a 1,300 page book. You can spare a couple more pages.
For
Just
me.
yes, do it for you. Well, I mean, I have to talk about the TCM of it all. I mean, uh, I don't know if you know that you have a huge fan base of just TCM lovers that are specifically Daveaholics. I don't know if that's the official term, but it's what I'm coining.
Oh,
I
nice.
mean
Not know that, and I don't even know if it's really true, but
I
I'll
think
take.
I definitely think it is. I know people. I know of people. But I mean, working at Entertainment Weekly, now coming on to TCM and becoming this authority on classic filmdom. Uh, are you the type of person that gets like in like looks back and is like, I'm doing all of this? Like, do you still have pinch me moments? Is it still something where you can be surprised at how your career is right now?
Every day. I mean, this is the dream job. And you're part of the TCM family, Kristen, obviously because you've been writing about us, but now you're a TCM author. And
So
again,
weird.
so yeah, it it's a very special group of people who appreciate what we do. And what I really like about it is that it seems as if there's people out there who kind of take to all five of us, right, for different reasons. And you were, we can't say much, I know, but you were just with all five of us a couple of days ago on a top secret project that you were covering for the Wrap. So you got to watch, and it was so fun for the five of us because, as you know, we are rarely all together. We're together on the cruise, we're together at
Yeah.
the film festival, but even then at the festival, we're like running in five different directions. And then occasionally they'll have a shoot like the one that you got to watch part of the other day where we're all there together. And I mean, at one point we were all sitting together. I have to be so cagey. And I remember like a little piece of hair on Ben's, temple was like a little out of place. And I was like, Ben, just fix that, because he's so good looking. I wanted him to like look his best. And I think Alicia or someone was like, this is why the five of us are so great, is because other people would try to sabotage the other hosts. I mean, there's so much dysfunction going on amongst on-air people, but I really don't think I'm being kind of too Pollyannish or cheesy to say that like the five of us really adore each other and are so happy when we get to be together and try our best to lift each other up. And it's such a great group of people that I feel so lucky to be a small part of.
No, I definitely agree. And I mean, I think we all saw it last year as well. I know I I asked Ben and Eddie about, it's been a year since everything went crazy with Warner Brothers Discovery, and people were very afraid that TCM was going to disappear. I know you mentioned at the Academy, things are better than they were this time last year. But I mean, for you, what is it like to look back on that time last year when a lot of TCM fans were like definitely freaking out, thinking like this could all disappear?
Well, we as the hosts were assured, even when all these layoffs were happening and people that we absolutely love and were so integral to the success of TCM were losing their jobs, it was made very clear to us, and this has borne out to be true, that the five of us were safe, right? That they weren't doing anything to the on-air team. So we knew that we were going to be okay. So I think and maybe more Ben and Eddie, because we're the three that are more active on social media. I think the three of us felt a little bit of a responsibility to try to assure people that the channel itself was not going anywhere. The five of us were not going anywhere. And our job is to make sure that the viewers of TCM, if they're not reading the trades, don't know or don't have an idea of what's going on. Having said that, it's been a real bummer that Polish Agnon, who was the head of our channel, isn't there anymore. That Ann Wilson, who was the head of production, isn't there anymore. Like, it really makes me sad. But we're going ahead, and the programming is the same, and I think the quality of everything that we're doing is the same. But on the other side of it, as you well know, what it's done is awakened this sleeping giant of support for the channel, not only amongst Steven Spielberg, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Martin Scorsese, but just everyday viewers who it's almost like you don't know what you got until you've almost lost it kind of a thing. And I feel like now people are even more appreciative than they were before about what we do and are passionate about trying to keep us alive for the future. So I feel good, at least for now.
Well, we also have seen Jason Reitman go out with a group of a bunch of other directors, Ryan Johnson, Gina Prince Bythewood, to buy the Fox Theater here in Los Angeles. So it really is almost a movement of, people kind of attempting to put their money where their mouth is to promote classic film, which I think is very cool. I know Ben told me a very fun story about how Paul Thomas Anderson is the reason that the lovely Robin Bittman is back doing the descriptions on the channel guide, which I told him I almost fell out of my chair. I was reading, like looking down. I always have TCM on in the background, and when I heard her voice, I literally looked up and was like, "They're back." That's amazing. I have to ask you. I mean, you do the musical. We haven't seen. I haven't been watching as regularly as I should, but I love the little interstitials you were doing with the musical sequences, kind of breaking those down. It's almost kind of like a nice little bonus commentary. Are there plans to do more of those? Because I love watching you break down scenes like that.
Thank you. Those are segments that we call Dave's play-by-play, and those originated about a year and a half ago, soon after we started this musical matinee franchise. They were meant to be only Twitter and Facebook segments that would just go on for the social media fans, but people seem to like them, which is really lovely. So they've aired on the channel too. So every time I go to Atlanta, which, as you know, is every other month, I go 6 times a year and I film 2 months of programming at a time. I always film 3 or 4 play-by-plays as well. So we're always keeping a new kind of backlog of these play-by-play segments tied to whichever movies I'm introducing as musical matinees. So I just did one on Singing in the Rain, and that was very hard to pick one number, but I picked Moses Supposes.
Ooh, because usually most people just pick Make Them Laugh and then go to bed. I mean, so I'm happy you picked something different.
Yeah. So anyway, whenever possible, we're doing more of those because people do seem to like it. And anything that I think that we can do as hosts that's unscripted like that, and allows us to kind of show a little bit more of our own personalities and interests and passions, I think is really great.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I also love the fact that, I know I'm all for kind of letting everybody do a little bit of everything. I know like having Eddie kind of do Ben intros. There was a little bit of a swap trying some different things. I'm all for like I keep saying I need to get you and Mario need to do the horror films this year. Like, not that I don't love Ben and Mario, but I feel like it would be really interesting to see which horror films you would pick.
Well,
And
that's
and
my
yeah.
friend, because Mario, that's the bromance that cannot be torn asunder, and they're so fun together. I'll find cool people to talk to too.
I mean, you do. You very much do. Well, I mean, you brought up if you get a second book. I mean, do you see more authoring in the future? Is this something you'd like to do regularly alongside all of the other things you're doing for TCM?
I think so. I really enjoyed it. I mean, and when I was doing it, I never thought there might be a second book, but the running press people already want to know what the second book is going to be, just like they want to know with you. So, I am in the well, first, as you know, I'm still going through, like, the book only came out 6 weeks ago, so it's still brand new. I'm still trying to sell it and make sure people
Exactly.
know.
You're like, I got to get the old book out first, and then yeah, I can start talking about a new one.
I mean, it literally is like a mom who just gave birth, like not being willing to think about being pregnant. Like, that's honestly how I feel, because I don't have kids. This is my kid. So no, yeah. So I think maybe 6 months from now, I might start really thinking about doing a second book. My inclination is to do a volume two of what I've just done, but maybe another idea might present itself. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes from here. I have to ask, I mean, before we close out, the festival is a coming. I'm ready for it. I know it's the 15th festival on the 30th anniversary of TCM. No pressure. Can you tell us anything about this year's fest?
A little bit. Yes. So, I mean, Pulp Fiction is the opening night film. John Travolta is coming. That's great. We're super excited about that. I know that I can say that Billy D. Williams is coming, and we're going to do a huge tribute to him. We, as always, are going to have, like, a silent film with live music, which is a true highlight for me. And as you know, we're back at the Egyptian Theater for some of the screenings, which, from what I understand, is spectacular.
Annie, get your gun on nitrate. I I'm already in line.
I can't wait for that too.
I'm ready. I'm ready. And I know people say Pulp Fiction is not TCM, but
Get over
that
it.
that movie is 30 years old and it sickens me because I remember when it came out. And I will be at opening night if TCM deigns to invite me. With bells on, ready to see John Travolta. And I think Quentin, I don't know if that's true, but I mean, I think he's showing up. So that's just me. Well, Dave, it's always great to sit down and talk with you, especially about your book, 50 Oscar Nights, which people can buy wherever they buy books. I don't know if you have a preferred retailer. I know some people say go to your library. Some people just say buy it wherever. They don't care. But where can fans find to get in touch with you? Feel free to throw out any events or anything they should know about coming up.
Well, first of all, to answer your question, I mean, I like people supporting independent bookstores. So I think if you're going to buy the book, find your local independent store and either get it or order it there. But you can get it anywhere: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Target.com, anywhere, which is great. I am on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I am on Instagram, both of them at Dave Karger, Karger. We'd love to see people on there. And then I have a cool event that I can tell you about, which I'm doing in conjunction with the Napa Valley Film Festival and the Culinary Institute of America. So anyone who is in Northern California who is a movie fan, on April 5th, 6th, and 7th, I am hosting a 3-day mini film festival in Napa, and it's movies that are about food. And after each screening, Friday night, Saturday lunch, Saturday night, and Sunday lunch, there's a meal cooked by a Culinary Institute of America chef that is inspired by the movie that we've just watched. So it's
That is so
Tempo
cool.
and 100 Foot Journey, The Taste of Things. So I would encourage anyone who is a film lover and a food lover in Northern California to go to the Napa Valley Film Festival website and join me. And I'm doing a book signing there, and I'll do a talk about the book as well.
Awesome. That's going to close out Ticklish Business for today. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. Reviews matter, so leave us one on Apple Podcasts of 5 stars. You can follow us on all social media at ticklish_biz on X, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at ticklishbiz. I'm always at the Wrap, as well as on social media at Kristen Lopez 88, as well as my new author page, which is coming soon, KristenKLopez.com. And our Patreon helps keep the lights on at Ticklish Biz HQ and gives us chances to do all sorts of new content. So consider helping us at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. My book, as well as Emily Edwards' books, are out now. You can order them wherever you buy books. We will be returning with a new episode soon. Till then.